The chamber was enormous. Ambassador Juan stood in the center of a circular floor that stretched nearly 300 meters across. Above him, rising in curved tiers like an ancient amphitheater, sat representatives from 217 alien species. The Galactic Senate chamber had been built to make newcomers feel small. It was working. Juan adjusted his translation earpiece and waited. He had been Earth's chief ambassador for 7 years now, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Senate. The job had aged him. His black hair now showed streaks of gray at the temples, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. Today, those lines would deepen further. Senator Velthrees called the session to order. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Its voice came through the translator as smooth and cold. We gather today to address Resolution 7749. The Preventative Peacekeeping Act. Juan felt his stomach tighten. He had heard rumors about this resolution for weeks, but the Senate had kept the details classified until now. Velthrees continued. For 3,000 years, this Senate has maintained peace across 200 systems. We have achieved this through wisdom and sacrifice. Every species that joins us must prove their commitment to peace. They must show they can be trusted. The alien paused and looked directly at Juan. Humanity has been a member for 15 years. In that time, you have expanded your military by 400%. You have built weapons we have never seen before. You have created artificial intelligence systems that frighten our military analysts. You adapt too quickly. You build too fast. You are too aggressive. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Juan kept his face neutral, but inside, anger began to burn. Therefore, Velthrees announced, Resolution 7749 requires all member species to surrender 90% of their military assets to Senate control within 60 days. This includes all warships, weapons platforms, quantum disruption devices, and artificial intelligence systems. The chamber erupted. Not in protest, but in approval. Aliens from a dozen different species chittered, hummed, and clicked their agreement. Juan realized with cold certainty that this resolution had been planned for months, maybe years, and it was aimed directly at humanity. He activated his microphone. Senator Velthrees, with respect, every other species in this chamber disarmed centuries ago. Before they joined, we were not told this would be required when we became members. Velthrees tilted its head. Circumstances change, Ambassador. Your species has shown itself to be uniquely dangerous. You have fought wars on every continent of your homeworld. Your history is written in blood. Even now, you maintain weapons capable of destroying entire planets. We cannot allow such violence to threaten the peace we have built. Other species have planet-destroying weapons, Juan said. His voice remained calm, but his hands gripped the podium. The Krell Unity, the Moravian Collective. They have arsenals larger than ours. The Krell and Moravians have been trusted members for over 1,000 years, another senator called out. You have been here 15 years. Trust must be earned. Juan looked around the chamber. He saw no friendly faces. Even the species that traded regularly with Earth looked away. This was political theater. The decision had already been made. How much time do we have to respond? He asked. 30 days, Velthrees said. You will return with Earth's decision. I trust your government will see wisdom in compliance. The alternative would be most unfortunate. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Juan understood perfectly. Comply or be expelled from the Senate. Lose access to trade routes. Lose access to technology. Lose the protection of Senate law. Earth would be alone in a galaxy that already feared them. I will deliver your message, Juan said quietly. The session ended. As aliens filed out of the chamber, Juan stood alone on the floor. His assistant, a young woman named Unji, approached him carefully. Sir, there's a secured communication waiting from Earth. Admiral Tejo wants to speak with you immediately. Juan nodded and followed her to the embassy. The Earth Embassy was a modest building compared to the towering structures maintained by older species. Everything about humanity's presence here screamed, newcomer. Temporary. Unimportant. In the secured communication room, Admiral Tejo's hologram flickered to life. The Admiral was a broad-shouldered man, with a jaw like granite and eyes that had seen too many battles. I watched the session, Tejo said without preamble. Those bastards planned this. Yes, Juan agreed. They're afraid of us. They should be. Tejo's voice was hard. Our fleet could take half the Senate's forces in a direct fight. Our weapons are decades ahead of theirs. That's why they're doing this. They can't beat us, so they're trying to make us beat ourselves. What's the mood on Earth? Tejo was quiet for a moment. Mixed. The civilian government is panicking. Half of them want to comply. They think we can negotiate better terms, prove we're peaceful, eventually be trusted. The other half wants to tell the Senate to go to hell and prepare for war. And the military will follow orders. Whatever Earth decides. But Juan, you need to understand something. If we give up 90% of our military, we're defenseless. I've studied the history. Every species that disarmed for the Senate ended up conquered or absorbed within a century. The Senate's peacekeeping force never protects the weak. It controls them. Juan had suspected the same thing. The Senate maintained order. Yes, but it was the order of a prison. The strong species made the rules. The weak species obeyed them. I'm sending you classified files, Tejo continued. Intelligence we've gathered over the past 5 years. You need to see what really happens to disarmed species. The data began downloading to Juan's secure terminal. He would review it on the long flight back to Earth. 30 days, Juan said. They gave us 30 days. That's not enough time to build more weapons. If that's what you're thinking. No. But it might be enough time to think of something else. Juan looked at the Admiral's hologram. What if we don't have to choose between submission and war? Tejo raised an eyebrow. You have an idea? Not yet, but I will. Get me a meeting with President Gina as soon as I land. And Tejo, start running scenarios. I want to know exactly what our capabilities are. Every ship, every weapon, every facility. I want to know what we can do, what we can hide, and what we can rebuild. You're thinking about cheating. I'm thinking about surviving. Juan ended the transmission. He sat alone in the dark room for a long time. Outside the embassy, the alien city gleamed with lights from 100 different civilizations. Beautiful, advanced, peaceful, and utterly ruthless. Humanity had clawed its way up from caves and stone tools. They had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear standoffs. They had reached for the stars because they refused to die on one planet. The Galactic Senate thought they could make humanity kneel with a vote and a deadline. They were about to learn something important about humans. Something that should have been obvious from Earth's bloody history. Humanity didn't know how to surrender. They only knew how to adapt. Juan began composing his report to Earth. In 30 days, he would return to this chamber with an answer. The Senate expected compliance or defiance. They would get neither. They would get something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would leave them speechless. But first, Earth needed to decide who they wanted to be. Servants or rebels. Juan suspected there was a third option. Something clever. Something human. He just had to find it. The emergency summit began at midnight, Geneva time. President Gina sat at the head of a long table that existed only in holographic space. Around her, projected with perfect clarity, sat the leaders of Earth's unified government. Each person was actually in a different location. Some on Earth, others on Mars, a few on the orbital stations. But the holographic technology made it seem like they were all in the same room. Gina was a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had led Earth through first contact, through the complicated negotiations to join the Senate, and through 15 years of learning to navigate galactic politics. Now, she faced the greatest crisis of her presidency. "Ambassador Juan has the floor," she said. Juan stood. He looked exhausted from the trip back to Earth, but his voice was steady. "The Senate has given us 60 days to surrender 90% of our military. They call it the Preventative Peacekeeping Act. But we all know what it really is. They're afraid of us. They want to make sure we can never challenge them." "Can we negotiate?" asked Minister Kyung, the head of diplomatic services. She was young for her position, only 40, but sharp as a knife. "Surely there's room for discussion. Maybe 70% instead of 90. Maybe we can keep certain defensive systems." "No." The word came from Dr. Hyun, the chief scientific advisor. He was a thin man, with thick glasses, and a habit of speaking bluntly. "I've analyzed the resolution. There's no flexibility. It's designed to cripple us completely." "Then we fight," General Youngsu said. The ground forces commander was built like a tank, all muscle and determination. "We have the best military in the galaxy. Let them try to take it from us. That would be suicide." Admiral Tejo countered. He appeared via hologram from the Mars Defense Station. "Not because we'd lose the first battle. We might even win the first 10 battles. But the Senate has 200 species. Millions of ships. Billions of soldiers. Eventually, they'd crush us through sheer numbers." Captain Mira spoke up. She commanded Earth's primary defense fleet and had a reputation for being both brilliant and cautious. "We need to consider what compliance actually means. If we give up our weapons, what happens next? Has anyone studied the historical data?" "I have." Dr. Hyun pulled up a holographic display. Data began flowing across the screens in front of each leader. "I analyzed the history of every species that disarmed for the Senate. The results are disturbing." The room fell silent as people read through the information. Within 50 years of disarmament, 70% of species lost their independence, Hyun continued. "The Senate doesn't conquer them openly. They do it slowly. First, they offer to help with defense, but only if the species follows Senate economic policies. Then they require Senate approval for major decisions. Then they station peacekeeping forces permanently. Before long, the species exists in name only. The Senate controls everything." "That's occupation disguised as protection," Gina said quietly. "Exactly. And the species that tried to resist after disarming, they were destroyed. The Senate justified it as maintaining peace. No other species dared to help them." Minister Kyung looked sick. "So, compliance means slow death, but resistance means fast death. Those are our only options?" The room descended into argument. Some leaders insisted negotiation was still possible. Others wanted to prepare for war immediately. A few suggested trying to flee, taking Earth's ships and colonies and heading for unexplored space. Gina let them argue. Sometimes leaders needed to vent their fear before they could think clearly. General Youngsu banged his fist on the table, making the holographic projection flicker. "We're warriors. We've always been warriors. Every nation on Earth was built through struggle. We don't bow to anyone. We're also smart," Captain Mira said. "Humans survived because we adapted. Because we found solutions when the obvious paths led to death. Fighting the Senate directly is suicide, but surrender is also death, just slower. So, what's the third option?" The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at Mira. "What third option?" Youngsu asked. "I don't know yet, but there has to be one. We're missing something." Mira looked at Juan. "You said on your message that you had an idea. Something about not choosing between submission and war." Juan nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about what the resolution actually requires. It says we must surrender 90% of our military assets. Warships, weapons platforms, AI systems. We have to destroy them under Senate supervision. Right. So we lose our military. But what is a military? Juan asked. Is it the weapons? Or is it the knowledge? The people? The industrial capacity? Dr. Hyun's eyes went wide. You want to disarm without becoming defenseless. Explain, Gina ordered. Juan brought up his own holographic display. We comply. We destroy 90% of our warships exactly as requested. We shut down our weapons platforms. We erase our military AI systems. We do everything they ask, in full view of their inspectors. That's surrender, Young-Soo protested. Let him finish, Gina said. But before we destroy anything, we archive everything. Complete blueprints of every weapon system. Full technical specifications. Manufacturing processes. We distribute this information across Earth's civilian networks. Universities. Private companies. Research institutions. The knowledge doesn't disappear. It just stops being military. Captain Mira sat forward. And our personnel? They retire, honorably, with full benefits. They become civilians, engineers, factory workers, ship designers, teachers. They spread out across every industry on Earth. Our manufacturing capacity? This from Minister Park, who oversaw Earth's industrial sectors. We expand it. Every military factory gets converted to civilian production. We start building commercial ships. Lots of them. We tell the Senate we need to grow our economy now that we're not spending money on military. Understanding began to dawn on faces around the table. Doctor. Hyun started typing rapidly, running calculations. You want to hide the military in plain sight, Young-Soo said slowly. Make it look civilian. Not exactly. I want to make it actually civilian. We comply with the letter of the resolution. We disarm completely and honestly. But we maintain the capability to rearm if we need to. The Senate will never allow that, Minister Kyung said. The Senate's resolution doesn't forbid it. They said we must destroy our military. They didn't say we can't build a new one if we're threatened. They didn't say our civilians can't own the knowledge. They didn't say our commercial ships can't have modular designs that could accept weapons if needed. Dr. Hyun looked up from his calculations. This could work. If we're careful, if we're smart about it, we'd need to design everything in advance. Make sure our civilian infrastructure can convert to military production rapidly. How rapidly? Gina asked. If we do this right, we could go from zero military to full war footing in 72 hours, maybe less. The room erupted again, but this time with excitement instead of fear. Leaders began talking over each other, suggesting ideas, finding problems and solutions. General Young-Soo raised his hand for silence. I like this plan. It's sneaky. It's clever. It's very human. But I have one concern. What happens when the Senate figures out what we've done? And they will figure it out eventually. By then it won't matter, Juan said. Because we won't have broken any laws. We complied. We disarmed. What we do with our civilian infrastructure is our own business. They can't punish us for being prepared. They can try, Taeho warned. Let them. By the time they realize what we've done, other species will be watching. If the Senate punishes us for following their own rules, every other species will see the truth. The Senate doesn't want peace. They want control. President Gina had been quiet, listening to everything. Now, she spoke. This plan requires perfect execution. One mistake, and the Senate will see through it. We'd face immediate consequences. Yes, Madam President, it also requires us to lie. Not with words, but with actions. We'll be telling the Senate we're disarmed while secretly maintaining the capability to rearm. Some will call that dishonorable. Some will call it smart, Mira countered. The Senate is forcing us to choose between survival and honor. I choose survival. We can be honorable later. Gina looked around the table at each face. These were Earth's best leaders, representing billions of people. The decision she made today would affect humanity for centuries. Dr. Hyun, you have 72 hours to design a civilian infrastructure that can convert to military production. I want detailed plans. General Young-soo, Captain Mira, Admiral Tae-ho, Captain Mira, you will coordinate the transition of military personnel to civilian sectors. Make it look natural. Minister Park, you'll oversee the expansion of civilian manufacturing. I want factories built, ships designed, everything ready before the Senate inspectors arrive. She stood up. Everyone else stood with her. Ambassador Hwan, you will return to the Senate in 30 days. You will tell them that Earth agrees to their terms. You will be humble, apologetic, grateful for their wisdom. You will make them believe we've learned our place. Hwan nodded. And meanwhile? Meanwhile, we'll prepare. Not for war, not for surrender, for something new. We're going to show the galaxy that humanity can't be broken. We bend, we adapt, we survive. That's what we do. Operation Legacy, Tae-ho said suddenly. That's what we should call it. Because we're protecting humanity's legacy. The right to defend ourselves. Operation Legacy, Gina repeated. She liked it. This meeting is classified at the highest level. No leaks, no rumors. If the Senate suspects what we're planning, everything fails. The holographic projections began winking out as leaders signed off to begin their tasks. Soon, only Gina and Hwan remained. Do you think this will work? She asked him quietly. I think we have no other choice. But yes, I believe it will work. The Senate has been playing this game for thousands of years. They're good at it. But they're also arrogant. They think they understand us. And they don't? Hwan smiled. It was not a nice smile. They've never met anyone like us before. Every other species either fought or surrendered. We're going to do both. And neither. We're going to rewrite the rules. Then make it happen, Ambassador. You have 30 days. Hwan bowed, and his projection vanished. President Gina sat alone in the real conference room in Geneva. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city. Earth looked peaceful from her window. Beautiful. Safe. It wouldn't stay that way if the Senate had its way. But humanity had survived worse than arrogant aliens. They had survived themselves. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson. Never underestimate the species that climbed up from nothing and refused to die. 60 days later, the Sol system was crowded with alien ships. Senator Velthries had arrived with an inspection fleet of over 300 vessels. They brought military auditors, weapons specialists, and enough sensors to examine every molecule in Earth's orbit. They were taking no chances. Ambassador Hwan watched from the observation deck of Earth's primary orbital station. Beside him stood Captain Mira, wearing her dress uniform for what might be the last time. In a few hours, she would officially retire from military service. They brought a lot of ships, Mira said quietly. They're afraid we'll change our minds, Hwan replied. Or try something clever. Mira smiled slightly. Imagine that. Below them, Earth's mighty defense fleet was gathered in formation. 5,000 warships, built over 50 years of constant expansion. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering. Quantum shields, relativistic weapons, AI targeting systems that could track 1 million objects simultaneously. The fleet that had made the Galactic Senate nervous, and in a few hours, 90% of it would be destroyed. Inspector Krell Nax arrived on the station precisely on time. The alien was short and wide, with 4 arms and skin like rough stone. It carried scanning equipment that seemed far too advanced for simple verification. Ambassador Hwan, it said through its translator. We are ready to begin the inspection process. You understand that any deviation from the resolution will result in immediate sanctions. We understand, Hwan said. Earth is committed to full compliance. Excellent. We will examine your ships, your weapons platforms, your manufacturing facilities, and all AI military systems. The process will take several days. You will provide complete access. Of course. The inspection began. Krelnax and its team moved through Earth's fleet like accountants through a ledger. They scanned every ship, verified every weapon system, checked every database. They were thorough, to the point of obsession. What they found was exactly what they expected to find. Earth's military was powerful, advanced, and dangerous. Exactly the kind of threat the Senate had feared. On the third day, the decommissioning ceremony began. Senator Velthrees attended personally, bringing recording equipment to broadcast the event across the galaxy. 4,500 warships would be destroyed. The largest disarmament in galactic history. Captain Mira stood on the bridge of the flagship, the EFS Unity. Around her, her crew worked in silence. They had trained for years to operate this ship. They had drilled until every response was automatic. They had bonded as a unit, become a family, and today they would watch their ship die. All personnel to evacuation ships, Mira ordered. Her voice was steady, but Juan, watching via video feed, could see the pain in her eyes. The crew filed out. Young men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth. Some were crying. Others wore expressions of stone. All of them looked back at the ship. One last time before leaving. Mira was the last to depart. She stood alone on the bridge, her hand resting on the captain's chair. "Goodbye, old friend," she whispered. Then she walked away. The demolition was spectacular. Human engineers had designed it to be impressive for the cameras. 4,000 ships, all detonating simultaneously. The quantum cores destabilized. In perfect synchronization, the resulting explosion lit up space like a new sun. On Earth, people gathered in public squares to watch. Some cheered, believing this meant peace. Others wept, understanding what had been lost. Most simply watched in silence, wondering what the future would hold. Senator Velthrees stood beside Juan on the observation deck. The alien's expression was unreadable, but its posture suggested satisfaction. "A wise decision," it said. "Humanity has shown maturity today. This is the path to true civilization." "We are grateful for the Senate's guidance," Juan replied. The words tasted like ash in his mouth, but he kept his face neutral. Over the next week, the weapons platforms were dismantled. Massive orbital installations that had protected Earth from any conceivable threat. Engineers carefully took them apart under alien supervision. The components were sorted, cataloged, and prepared for recycling. What the inspectors didn't notice was that the engineers were taking holos of every piece, recording every connection, memorizing every system. The platforms were being destroyed, yes, but the knowledge of how to rebuild them was being carefully preserved. Colonel Daehyun supervised the disposal of Earth's AI military systems. He was a quiet man with a talent for computers and a gift for appearing harmless. The Senate inspectors liked him. They thought he was cooperative. "These AI cores are quite sophisticated," Inspector Krelnax commented, examining one of the massive databanks. "Yes," Daehyun agreed. "They took decades to develop. Thousands of our best programmers contributed to their creation, and you will destroy all of them? Every single one." As requested, Daehyun initiated the deletion sequence. On screens around the room, code began scrolling as the AIs were systematically erased. What the inspectors didn't know was that the deletion was being recorded. Every single line of code was being copied to distributed civilian networks even as it was destroyed. Universities were receiving portions. Private tech companies were archiving sections. Research institutions were storing fragments. When the deletion was complete, the AI would be gone from military systems. But the knowledge, the code, the architecture would all exist in thousands of civilian locations, scattered, hidden in plain sight, ready to be reassembled if needed. The inspection team spent 3 weeks examining Earth's compliance. They checked and double-checked everything. They found no violations. Earth was doing exactly what the resolution required. What they failed to understand was that compliance wasn't the same as surrender. While the inspectors were focused on destroying weapons, they paid less attention to what was being built. Earth's civilian shipyards had expanded dramatically in the past 2 months. New facilities were opening across the system. Mars now had 12 new shipyards. The asteroid belt stations had tripled their manufacturing capacity. When Inspector Krell-Nax asked about this, Minister Park explained patiently, "We need to grow our economy. For decades, we spent enormous resources on military production. Now that we're disarmed, we're redirecting that capacity to civilian uses, trade ships, passenger vessels, mining operations. This is good for the entire galaxy." The inspector agreed. Economic growth was encouraged. The Senate wanted member species to be productive. What the inspector didn't examine closely was the design of these new civilian ships. They were modular, built with standardized components. With clever engineering, they could be reconfigured quickly. A cargo ship could become a missile platform. A passenger liner could mount weapons. A mining vessel could deploy defensive shields, but that would only matter if the ships were reconfigured. Right now, they were purely civilian, legal, harmless. Captain Mira, now officially retired, took a position as the director of civilian fleet operations. Her job was to coordinate Earth's growing merchant marine. Thousands of former military personnel followed her lead. Pilots became commercial ship captains. Engineers joined civilian manufacturing firms. Weapons specialists went to work for mining companies. On paper, Earth had demilitarized. In reality, they had simply reorganized. The final ceremony took place in the Senate chamber. Ambassador Juan stood once again on that enormous floor, with Senator Vel Threes and the other alien representatives looking down at him. Earth has completed its compliance with Resolution 7749, Vel Threes announced. Their military has been reduced to the required 10%. They have destroyed their weapons of mass destruction. They have dismantled their AI systems. The inspection teams confirm complete cooperation. Applause echoed through the chamber. The other species approved. Another dangerous newcomer had been tamed. Juan stepped forward to speak. He had prepared his words carefully. On behalf of humanity, I thank the Galactic Senate for this opportunity to prove our commitment to peace. We understand now that strength is not measured in weapons, but in wisdom. We have learned from species far older and wiser than ourselves. Earth embraces the path of civilization and cooperation. More applause. Senator Vel Threes looked genuinely pleased. We welcome Earth as a true member of the galactic community, it said. May this mark the beginning of a new era of harmony. Juan bowed respectfully and returned to his seat. Inside, he was counting the ships being built, counting the personnel scattered across civilian industries, counting the weapons blueprints archived in 1,000 different locations. Earth had complied with every letter of the resolution. They had disarmed exactly as requested. The Senate had gotten everything it asked for, and somehow they had lost. That night, in his private quarters at the embassy, Juan received a coded message from Earth. From President Gina, Phase 1 complete. All personnel relocated. All knowledge preserved. Manufacturing capacity at 140% of pre-resolution levels. Civilian fleet construction ahead of schedule. We are compliant. We are peaceful. We are ready. Juan deleted the message and looked out at the alien city. Lights from 100 civilizations twinkled in the darkness. Beautiful. Advanced. Confident. They had no idea what humanity had just done. The Senate thought they had defanged a dangerous predator. They thought Earth had been put in its place. They were wrong. Humanity had not been weakened. They had been transformed. They had taken the Senate's rules and turned them into something new. Something the galaxy had never seen. Other species maintained peace by giving up the ability to fight. Humanity had maintained the ability to fight while appearing peaceful. They had become a distributed, decentralized military, hidden in civilian infrastructure. You couldn't destroy what didn't exist. You couldn't conquer what couldn't be found. You couldn't disable a military that was just ordinary people going about ordinary lives until the moment they weren't. Juan poured himself a drink and raised the glass toward the alien city. To compliance, he said softly. And to survival. In shipyards across the Sol system, workers welded and built. They were constructing cargo vessels and passenger ships. Completely civilian. Completely legal. Each ship's cargo hold was designed to exact specifications. The hull thickness was precisely calculated. The power systems were more robust than strictly necessary for commercial use. No one was breaking any laws. No one was building weapons. No one was doing anything wrong. But if those ships were ever needed, if Earth was ever threatened, the holds could accept weapons in 5 minutes. The hulls could support military-grade shields. The power systems could drive combat-level engines. The Senate had demanded disarmament. Earth had complied. They just hadn't promised to stay disarmed. And that difference was going to change everything. 18 months after Earth's disarmament, the galaxy learned that peace was more fragile than anyone had believed. The Kreth Empire struck without warning. They were a militant species from the Outer Rim, aggressive and expansionist. For centuries, the Galactic Senate had kept them contained through treaties and threats, but the Kreth had been watching. They had seen Earth disarmed. They had seen the Senate's power used not for protection, but for control. And they had decided the Senate was weak. 3 Senate Protectorate worlds went dark in a single day. Comms cut off. Defense platforms destroyed. The Kreth fleet descended on colonies that had trusted the Senate to protect them. In the Senate chamber, panic replaced the usual calm. "We need to mobilize the peacekeeping force," demanded the representative from Talvor 9, one of the attacked worlds. "Our people are dying." Senator Velthrees called for order. "The Senate peacekeeping protocols require a committee review. We must establish rules of engagement. We must vote on resource allocation. We must ensure that any response is measured and appropriate." "There's no time for that," the Talvor representative shouted. "The Kreth are slaughtering civilians right now. Proper procedure must be followed," Velthrees insisted. Ambassador Juan watched the debate with growing disgust. He had seen this before. The Senate moved slowly, carefully, always protecting itself first, its member worlds second. By the time they finished debating, thousands would be dead. He activated his communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. President Gina received Juan's report in the middle of the night. She read it twice, then called an emergency session of her cabinet. "The Kreth Empire is attacking Senate worlds. The Senate is debating what to do. People are dying." She looked around the table at her advisors. "We need to offer humanitarian aid. We're not part of this conflict," Minister Kyung warned. "If we get involved, the Kreth might see us as enemies." "We won't send military aid," Gina said. "We'll send civilian transports, medical supplies, rescue ships, food and shelter for refugees. We're a peaceful member of the Senate." This is exactly what peaceful species do. Admiral Tejo, who now ran Earth's System Defense Patrol, the tiny 10% military force that remained official, smiled. "You want to test our civilian fleet. I want to help people who need it. If our civilian fleet happens to be capable of defending itself, well, that's just good planning." Within 6 hours, Earth had assembled a humanitarian convoy. 200 civilian ships loaded with medical supplies, food, temporary shelters, and rescue equipment. The convoy was led by Salmon, Earth's trade commissioner, a efficient woman who had previously been a logistics coordinator for the military. "This is a civilian operation," President Gina told Salmon via secure channel. "You have no military authority. You're simply delivering aid to people in need." "Understood, Madam President." Completely civilian. Salmon's tone suggested she understood the unspoken message. The convoy jumped into hyperspace, heading for the attacked worlds. They arrived in the Talvor system to find chaos. Kreth warships were bombarding the main colony from orbit. Fires burned across 3 continents. Escape pods filled space as people fled dying stations. Samen's convoy moved in, broadcasting civilian identification codes. This is Earth, Humanitarian Convoy Delta 7. We are unarmed civilian vessels bringing aid to Talvor 9. We mean no harm to anyone. We are protected under Galactic Senate civilian shipping regulations. The Kreth commander, a brutal creature named Varkesh, saw easy targets. Civilian ships were full of supplies that could be looted. He ordered 3 of his raiders to intercept the convoy. Destroy or capture the Earth ships, he commanded. Show the Senate that their peace lovers can't protect anyone. The 3 Kreth raiders were built for violence. Fast, heavily armed, with crews that enjoyed killing. They swept toward the Earth convoy with weapons hot. On the lead transport, Soman watched them approach. How long until they're in firing range? She asked her crew. 90 seconds, replied her tactical officer, a man named Junho who had previously served on Admiral Tejo's flagship. Weapons status? Mounts are ready. We can deploy in 5 minutes. We have 90 seconds. Then we'll do it in 90 seconds. Junho's fingers flew across his console. Throughout the convoy, cargo holds opened. Modular weapon systems began deploying. The Kreth ships closed in. They targeted the lead transport and fired. Their weapons hit empty space. The Earth ship had shields. Military-grade shields that appeared the moment they were needed. Return fire. Saman ordered calmly. Disable their weapons and engines. Don't destroy them. We're a humanitarian mission. The Earth convoy opened fire. Precision strikes took out the Kreth raiders' weapon systems. Their engines went dark. Within 90 seconds, all 3 ships were drifting. Helpless, Commander Varkesh stared at his tactical display in confusion. What just happened? The civilian ships fought back, his tactical officer reported. Civilian ships don't have those things, but Earth's ships did. Because Earth had spent 18 months building a civilian fleet that was civilian only until it needed to be something else. Senator Velthries heard about the incident within hours. The alien called an emergency meeting with Ambassador Juan. Your civilian ships attacked Kreth vessels, Velthries said. Its voice was cold with anger. Our civilian ships defended themselves against unprovoked attack, Juan corrected. The Kreth fired first. We simply protected our people and our humanitarian cargo. Civilian ships don't have military weapons. Our ships have defensive systems, which are completely legal under Senate regulations. We're allowed to protect ourselves from pirates and raiders. Those weren't defensive systems. Our analysts say your ships deployed military-grade weapons in under 2 minutes. Juan shrugged. Our civilian engineers are very good. They design modular ships that can be adapted for different purposes. Safety is important to us. You're violating the spirit of the resolution. We're following the letter of it. We disarmed. We destroyed 90% of our military. We complied completely. What we do with our civilian infrastructure is our business. Velthries was silent for a long moment. Then it said, We will investigate this. Please do. You'll find we've broken no laws. The investigation took 3 weeks. Senate inspectors examined Earth's civilian shipbuilding operations. They found exactly what Juan had described. Ships with modular designs. Components that could be swapped quickly. Civilian vessels that could be reconfigured for different roles. Nothing illegal. Nothing that violated Resolution 7749. Just very clever engineering. While the Senate investigated, Earth's humanitarian convoy continued its work. They rescued thousands of refugees from the Kreth attacks. They provided medical care, food, shelter, and when Kreth ships tried to interfere, they defended themselves with calm efficiency. More Earth convoys arrived. Then more. Within a month, there were over 1,000 Earth civilian ships operating in the combat zone, providing aid, rescuing people, and, when necessary, fighting off Kreth attackers. The galaxy watched in amazement. Other species had sent thoughts and prayers. Earth had sent ships. Engineer Borum, who ran the largest civilian shipbuilding corporation on Mars, received a visit from Senator Velthrees. The alien wanted to see the shipyards for itself. Boram was a stocky woman with grease under her fingernails and a mind that worked in 3 dimensions. She had designed half of Earth's new civilian fleet. She gave the senator a tour. "This is a cargo vessel," she explained, gesturing to a ship under construction. "Maximum capacity, 40,000 tons. Range of 8 light years. Standard civilian grade throughout. And these mounting points?" Velthrees indicated several unusual structural elements. "Cargo management systems. Depending on what we're shipping, we attach different handling equipment. Grain requires one type of system. Manufactured goods require another. Sensitive electronics require special protective modules. These look like weapon mounts. They're universal attachment points. Very flexible design. Saves money to build one ship that can do many jobs, rather than specialized ships for each task." Velthrees examined the construction closely. "And how quickly could you attach weapons to these points?" Borum smiled. "I wouldn't know. I build civilian ships. But theoretically, if someone wanted to do that, and if they had weapons already manufactured, and if they had trained crews who knew what they were doing, maybe 5 minutes? I'm just guessing." The senator's alien expression was unreadable, but Borum suspected it was not happy. Back in the Senate chamber, Velthrees presented its findings. Earth has technically complied with Resolution 7749. They disarmed as required. They destroyed their military. But they have created a civilian infrastructure that can become military at a moment's notice. "Is that illegal?" asked another senator. "No. The resolution only restricted military assets. It said nothing about civilian capabilities." "Then what can we do?" Velthrees had no answer. In the Talvor system, the situation reached a crisis point. Commander Varkesh, enraged by his losses to Earth's civilian ships, made a decision. He would attack Earth directly, show them what happened to species that interfered with the Kreth Empire. He assembled a raiding force of 50 warships and jumped to the Sol system. On Earth, President Gina received the warning from long-range sensors. 50 Kreth warships inbound. Arriving in 6 hours, she activated the emergency response protocols that had been planned 18 months ago. Across the Sol system, messages went out. Encrypted. Precise. Urgent. In civilian shipyards, workers stopped what they were doing and moved to storage facilities. They pulled out components that had been carefully prepared and stored. Weapons. Shield generators. Engine upgrades. Military-grade sensors. On civilian ships, crews who had once been military began installing these components into the universal mounting points that Engineer Borum had designed. In retired personnel offices across Earth, Mars, and the orbital stations, thousands of former soldiers received activation messages. They put down their civilian work and reported to assembly points. In distributed data centers across 100 civilian locations, AI code fragments began downloading and assembling. The military AI systems that had been destroyed 18 months ago were rebuilding themselves. Captain Mira, who had been director of civilian fleet operations, put on a uniform she had kept in her closet. She reported to the Orbital Command Center. "Welcome back, Captain," Admiral Tejo said. He had never really stopped being an admiral. The System Defense Patrol had been a polite fiction. "Good to be back, sir. At current pace, we'll have 200,000 armed vessels ready in 72 hours. We have 6 hours. Then we'd better move faster." Across the Sol system, Earth's hidden military awakened. It had never truly gone to sleep. It had just been distributed, decentralized, hidden in the bones of civilian life. Now it was coming back together, and the Kreth Empire was about to learn something the Galactic Senate had forgotten. You can disarm humanity, but you can never make them helpless. Not while they still remember how to fight. The emergency session of the Galactic Senate was the most chaotic in 300 years. Representatives were shouting. Some were demanding action. Others were demanding explanation. A few were quietly recalculating their political alliances. Senator Velthries tried to maintain order and failed. The chamber descended into argument. The Kreth are attacking Earth directly, the Talvor representative said. After Earth sent aid to help us. This is an act of war. Earth ships attacked Kreth vessels first, countered a senator, sympathetic to the Kreth. After the Kreth fired on a humanitarian convoy. We need to send the peacekeeping force to protect Earth, suggested another voice. The peacekeeping force is still being debated, Velthries said. We haven't finished determining the rules of engagement for the Talvor situation. We can't possibly mobilize for Earth in time. Then Earth will be destroyed, the Talvor representative said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew it was true. The Kreth raiding force was already in hyperspace. They would arrive at Earth in hours. The Senate couldn't organize a response that quickly, even if they wanted to. Humanity's brief membership in the galactic community was about to end in blood. Ambassador Juan stood up. May I address the chamber? Velthries looked at him with something that might have been pity. Of course, Ambassador. You have the floor. Juan walked to the center of the chamber. He was calm. Too calm. It made some of the senators nervous. Thank you, Senator. I want to share a message from President Gina. She asked me to broadcast it to the entire galaxy. With your permission? Velthries gestured agreement. What harm could it do now? The main display activated. President Gina appeared, standing in what looked like a command center. Behind her, tactical displays showed the Sol system. She looked directly at the camera. Citizens of the galaxy. I am President Gina of Earth. 18 months ago, we agreed to disarm. We followed the Galactic Senate's Resolution 7749. We destroyed 90% of our military. We did this in good faith, trusting the Senate to protect us as they protect all member worlds. She paused. Now the Kreth Empire is attacking us. The Senate has informed our ambassador that they cannot mobilize in time to help. We understand. The Senate moves slowly, carefully. This is the price of civilization. Another pause. Juan watched the senators' faces. They looked uncomfortable. But humanity learned something long ago, before we reached the stars. We learned it in fire and blood across thousands of years of history. We learned that peace is precious, that civilization is worth fighting for, and that the only way to protect what you love is to be ready to defend it. The display behind her changed, showed images of Earth's civilian shipyards. When we disarmed, we complied completely with the Senate's requirements. We destroyed our military. We did not lie. We did not cheat. But we also did not forget. We did not become helpless. We moved our strength into civilian hands. We distributed our knowledge across 1 million locations. We made our entire civilization into a reserve force that could mobilize when needed. The tactical display updated. Showed the Sol system filling with ships. Thousands of them. Then tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. In the Senate chamber, representatives stared in disbelief. The Kreth Empire is sending 50 warships to attack Earth, President Gina continued. We have mobilized our civilian infrastructure in response. As I speak, 200,000 vessels are being equipped for combat. Our retired military personnel are returning to duty. Our distributed AI systems are reassembling. Our manufacturing capacity is producing weapons. She leaned forward. We are doing all of this in 72 hours. We could have done it faster. But we wanted to be sure the Senate saw exactly what we are capable of. Velthries stood up in the Senate chamber. This is a violation! You claim to be disarmed! Juan turned to face the senator. We were disarmed. We destroyed exactly what you asked us to destroy. We followed your resolution to the letter. What we do with our civilian resources is not restricted by any Senate law. You deceived us. We survived. There's a difference. On the display, President Gina was still speaking. To the Kreeth Empire, you are making a mistake. Turn back now. We do not want war. But if you attack Earth, you will face the consequences. We are not helpless. We are not defenseless. We are ready. The transmission ended. The Senate chamber exploded into argument again. In the Sol system, Commander Varkesh received the same broadcast. He watched it on his flagship's view screen. Then he laughed. 200,000 civilian ships? With weapons installed in 3 days? This is propaganda. Lies meant to make us afraid. His tactical officer looked worried. Commander, our long-range sensors are detecting a massive increase in ship activity throughout their system. Sensor errors, or civilian ships moving around in panic. We continue the attack. 6 hours later, the Kreeth fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. What they found waiting for them made Varkesh's blood run cold. Ships, everywhere, filling space in formations so precise they could only be military. But the identification codes said they were civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, all of them bristling with weapons. How many? Varkesh whispered. Sensors show 187,000 vessels in combat formation, his tactical officer reported. More are joining every minute. Captain Mira stood on the bridge of a ship that had been a civilian transport 48 hours ago. Now, it was the command vessel for Earth's first response fleet. Around her, her crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had never forgotten how to be soldiers. They had just been civilians for a while. Open a channel to the Kreeth flagship, she ordered. The communication connected. Varkesh's face appeared on her screen. I am Captain Mira of Earth's Defense Forces. You are outnumbered more than 3,000 to 1. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of our system. This is your only warning, Varkesh snarled. You're civilians playing at war. You can't have built a real military in 3 days. You're right. We didn't build it in 3 days. We built it over 18 months. We just kept it disassembled until we needed it. Now, we need it. This is impossible. No, it's human. Mira's voice was cold. Now power down or be destroyed. Varkesh made the worst decision of his life. He ordered his ships to attack. The battle lasted 11 minutes. The Kreeth ships were experienced warriors. But they were facing overwhelming numbers coordinated by AI systems that had been designed to fight entire fleets. Earth's weapons were precise. Their targeting was perfect. Their tactics were ruthless. 32 Kreeth ships were destroyed in the first 90 seconds. The rest tried to retreat. Earth's ships pursued them, disabling their hyperdrives, capturing their vessels intact. By the time it was over, the Kreeth fleet had been completely destroyed or captured. Earth had not lost a single ship. Admiral Tejo reported the results to President Gina. 0 casualties on our side. Complete victory. The Kreeth ships that survived are being held under guard. Broadcast everything, Gina ordered. I want the entire galaxy to see this. The footage went out on every public channel. Species across the galaxy watched in amazement as Earth's rapidly assembled fleet destroyed a Kreeth raiding force that should have annihilated them. In the Senate chamber, the silence was absolute. Senators stared at the recordings. They saw the precision, the coordination, the overwhelming force. They saw what humanity had become. Finally, Senator Velthris spoke. You have violated the spirit of resolution. 7,749. Ambassador Juan stood calmly. We have followed the letter of it. We disarmed as requested. We destroyed our military as requested. That we maintained the capability to rebuild quickly is not illegal. That we organized our civilian infrastructure efficiently is not illegal. That we prepared for threats is not illegal. You made fools of us. No. You made assumptions about us. You assumed disarmament meant helplessness. You assumed compliance meant surrender. You assumed we would be like every other species that came before us. Juan's voice grew harder. 21. We are not like them. We will never be like them. The Senate will not tolerate this. The Senate has no choice. Juan gestured to the tactical displays still showing Earth's fleet. You can't force us to disarm again. We've proven we can rebuild in days. You can't invade us. We have hundreds of thousands of ships and the industrial capacity to build millions more. You can't economically sanction us. We trade with half the galaxy now. They need us. Then what do you want? The same thing we've always wanted. To be left alone to defend ourselves. To live in peace, but on our terms, not yours. To be partners in this galaxy, not subjects. The Talvor representative stood up. Earth saved my world when the Senate would not. They sent aid when we were dying. They fought when we couldn't. I support them. Another senator rose. Then another. Species that had watched Earth's humanitarian missions. Species that had seen the Senate's bureaucracy fail to protect them. Species that were tired of being told they needed to be helpless to be civilized. The balance in the chamber was shifting. Senator Velthries saw it happening and understood. Humanity had changed the game. They had shown that disarmament didn't have to mean weakness, that civilian infrastructure could become military strength, that preparation and peace were not opposites. What you have done will destabilize the galaxy, Velthries said. What we have done will save it, Juan replied. The Kreeth attacked because they thought the Senate was weak, because they thought disarmed species were easy targets. We proved them wrong. We showed that even without a standing military, we can defend ourselves. That example will spread. Thanks for watching. Mansivan leaders. He was right. Already, representatives from a dozen species were requesting information about Earth's civilian reserve doctrine. They wanted to know how to organize their economies for rapid mobilization, how to maintain knowledge and capability without violating Senate rules. President Gina addressed the galaxy again. This time, her message was different. We are establishing an initiative to help other species protect themselves. We'll share our organizational methods. We'll help design modular, civilian infrastructure. We'll teach the philosophy of distributed defense. Any species that wants to learn how to be ready without maintaining a large military is welcome. All, any mana, all. The Senate couldn't stop it. Too many species were interested. The old model of total disarmament was breaking down. Within a year, 40 species had adopted versions of Earth's system. Within 5 years, the number was over 100. The galaxy was transforming. The Kreeth Empire, humiliated by their defeat, retreated to their home systems. They had learned that attacking disarmed species was no longer safe. Even civilians could fight back now. Ambassador Juan stood in the Senate chamber one last time before rotating back to Earth. Senator Velthries approached him. You have destroyed 3,000 years of peace, the alien said. We have destroyed 3,000 years of submission disguised as peace, Juan corrected. Real peace comes from mutual respect, from knowing that everyone can defend themselves, from strength, not weakness. The Senate will never trust you. We don't need your trust. We have our strength. We have our allies. We have proven that humanity cannot be controlled. He looked at the alien directly. You tried to disarm us. We complied. And we still won. That should tell you everything you need to know about our species. What will you do now? We'll live. We'll trade. We'll explore. We'll be peaceful neighbors to anyone who respects us. But we'll never be helpless again. We'll never forget that the only guarantee of freedom is the ability to defend it. Juan left the Senate chamber and headed back to Earth. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. Not through war, not through rebellion, but through something more powerful. They had shown that compliance could be a weapon, that following rules could lead to victory, that being underestimated was an advantage. The Galactic Senate had tried to disarm humanity and make them safe. Instead, They had taught humanity how to hide a military inside a civilization, how to be dangerous while appearing harmless. Earth's reaction had left them speechless. Not because humanity had fought, but because humanity had won without breaking a single law. And that, more than any weapon, made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Because you can't conquer people who know how to rebuild. You can't suppress people who store their strength in knowledge. You can't defeat people who transform every civilian into a potential soldier. The Galactic Senate had tried to tame humanity. They had created something far more formidable instead, a species that could disarm and rearm at will. That could be peaceful or violent as needed. That would never be helpless again. Humanity had shown the galaxy a new way to survive, and the galaxy would never be the same.